Imagine it's late at night. You hear a knock on the door. You get up to see what it is. You open the door and there's these two children begging for you to let them in. But their voice is almost monotone. No real emotion behind it. Yes, use your phone. Get you to let them inside. And at that moment, you really look at them as you have this immense feeling of dread. And you notice that their eyes are pitch black. Hi, I'm Brittany and welcome back to my channel. If you're new or simply not yet subscribed, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you didn't guess it yet, we're talking about real life black-eyed kids encounters. I hope you guys all had a great holiday season. I have a ton planned for this year and I can't wait to share it all for you. I literally have months planned already, so I'm really excited for that. Make sure the bell is on so you don't miss a single thing. And with that, let's dive in to these stories. So the first one takes a little bit of a different turn and it's called Black-Eyed Grandparents. Says a bit of a scene setting. In 96-97, I lived in a fairly old terraced house with a cemetery at the end of the road. Cliche, I know, but it's an important detail. Nothing remarkable about the house or the area. It was just convenient for college. Anyway, I was up late one night on the PC in my bedroom, which looked out onto the street. It was about 2 or 3 a.m. For whatever reason, probably to give my eyes a rest, I wandered over to the window and looked down at the road in the direction of the cemetery. And I saw 3 people walking slowly down the road. I could see that they were quite old and appeared to be dressed in funeral clothes, which given the hour was weird. There were 2 women and a man. I put their ages at about 80, and the woman in the middle was being steadied or guided by the other woman and the man. And as they came closer, I got the impression that she was upset. My first thought was that given their age, she had recently buried her husband and grief had caused her to behave slightly irrationally, causing her to try to be out near the cemetery at that hour, and that the other 2 friends or relatives trying to look after her and get her home. Anyway, it was all interesting enough for me to carry on watching as they got closer to the house. Just outside the front of the house was a street lamp. I watched them as they made their way past, but when they got to the lamppost, they all stopped. And the upset woman in the middle looked up at me and grinned. That would just be terrifying. You don't smile at people in windows, ever. This was when things got weird. The grin became a sort of grimace. And if there was any color in her face to start with, it was now dead white. At that point, I realized I was staring right into her eyes, but her eyes were pitch black. Time sort of dilated. If you've ever crashed a car, the final split second before you make an impact seems to drag out as you process more information than normal in the time frame. It was that sort of thing. I'm sure we only made eye contact for a second, but it felt like several minutes, and as my peripheral vision faded, and I felt like all I could see were those 2 black holes in her face, drawing me in. Although the distance between us didn't change, she somehow felt like she was coming closer. And I was kind of aware, although I couldn't honestly say I could see them at that point. The other 2 people with her were just continuing to look down the road, as if frozen, but waiting for this woman to finish whatever she was doing. I was suddenly hit with this intense feeling of dread and panic, so I threw myself on the floor. As soon as I'd broken her gaze, I felt pretty stupid that this upset old woman who clearly needed help had spooked me so badly. So I looked out the window again, and there was no sign of them. It was a longest straight road, and the house was towards the middle, so they would have had trouble getting out of sight in the time I looked away. The next one, they're on my balcony. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm in my early 20s. I just moved into this apartment, and I tend to live a very private life. I don't even have a Facebook account. I work during the day at a grocery store. Okay, so I'm walking up my flight of steps to get to my apartment, and I hear the kids laughing, and then I heard whispering. It was kind of late, so I thought this was weird, but I ignored it and walked into my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor. I was getting ready to open my balcony door, It was really muggy in my apartment. I walk over to the door and pull my blinds, and 2 kids are staring back at me. I screamed and backed away, smashing my leg into a table. They were both in blue jeans, and the oldest had on a green shirt with white stripes, and the younger had on a button-up light blue shirt. The oldest one touched the sliding door. "Hey, miss, can you let us in?" The younger one just kept looking around. I still just stared at them. I finally were able to say, "How'd you get on my balcony?" I walked to the door and noticed how excited the older one got. He moved closer to the entrance. "Can you let us in?" I wasn't thinking. I unlocked the door, and when I looked up, their eyes, you guys, their eyes were black. Their entire eye. I quickly locked the door and told them I had to call the police because my door was jammed and I couldn't unlock the door. So I called the police. The oldest boy pleaded with me the entire time to let them in. The police arrived about an hour ago. They came in and walked onto the balcony. When they opened my balcony door, nothing was there. They looked down and saw 2 children that were running in the parking lot away from the building. The police took the report and said they had to have help getting up there and that they would question the neighbors. I'm freaking out. I'm crying. I don't know. I don't want to stay here. But then again, I don't feel safe going outside right now. The next one. I was having a visceral experience all over my body. I'd be lying if I told you I didn't know about black-eyed kids before this happened to me. Late summer last year, I definitely did. Now in the moment, that idea never crossed my mind. But afterward, yes. And the thought led to all kinds of regrets. I realize it's stupid, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about my neighborhood. I live in a poor part of town, a bit ghetto, a bit of the borough, a bit of the lower economic class of a cross-section of races. It's LA. The apartment complex spans a short block. It's dusty brown, like the desert we live in. It's got 2 pools, lots of little children, and for the most part, a pretty friendly population. I'm a writer trying to make it in Hollywood, so I spend my free time writing. When this happened, I was working mostly in the mornings and afternoons. I would get home, hit the gym, and then settle in for the evening in front of my computer. It's pretty common for the evenings in the summer to be chaotic around the apartment complex. Kids playing in the pool, the ice cream man pushing his cart up and down the sidewalk, women talking outside the laundry room, but pleasant. And people will knock on your door, sometimes to borrow something. I cook, so neighbors pop by to find the origins of great aromas wafting through my kitchen window. Sometimes for a little help working on a broken down car, but mostly kids selling candy, bars, or Christmas wrapping paper. Because it's hot, I leave my windows open, hoping for the cross breeze. That means, though, I can't see anyone from where I sit and work. I can hear them very clearly as they walk up to my door. When I hear someone knock, I answer it. Besides buying the occasional candy bar, I smile, politely decline, and wish them a nice day and send them off. No big deal. That evening it was quiet, which was strange in and of itself. I should have at least been able to hear the distant sound of music. I heard a couple of people walk up to my door. I'm not the first apartment in my courtyard, so usually I hear the salespeople as they knock on my neighbors' doors and walk their way around to me. Not this time. Whoever it was walked right up to my door and knocked. I got up to answer it, reaching for the door handle, when a chill went through my body like I've never experienced. A cold tightness in my chest. I halted my hand movement towards the door handle and placed it flat on the door as if I was feeling for heat from a fire. I have a peephole on my door, but it never crossed my mind to use it. I stood there with my hand flat on the door and listened. They knocked again. I don't scare easy. And I wasn't exactly afraid, but I was having a visceral experience all over my body. A base fear reaction, just like I could hear them. They had heard me move to the door. They knew I was inside. Yes, I said. Who is it? A boy's voice answered. We need to use your phone. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I started laughing. I stress laugh. When I am in pain or under pressure, I stress laugh too. They heard me laughing, and neither of us moved for about a minute or two. A really, really long minute or two. Finally, they walked away. Not to any of the other of the 8 doorways within 15 feet. Not to ask anyone else. Before they could have gone more than a dozen yards, Curiosity reasserted itself and I yanked the door open, running after them to see who it was and where they were headed. The courtyard of my complex was completely empty. Afterwards, I thought the experience fit the stories of the black-eyed kids, and I kicked myself for not opening the door. Coming face to face with black-eyed kids? How cool would that have been? But then I remember that feeling, my skin crawling into the certain knowledge to me at that moment. There was no way I was going to open that door in time. Next, we have every story I've read about them is from someone who already knew about them. Last night was like any other night. I was switching between listening to music and watching YouTube videos with one headphone in so I could hear my infant daughter if she cries. That way my wife could get a full night's sleep. When I decided to go lay down in the spare bed in the baby's room, just as I dozed off, I heard a thumping coming from the front porch. Startled at first, I opened my eyes wide and scanned the room, realizing it was most likely my cat scratching himself on the front porch. I dozed back off. Then again, the thumping. Damn cat. I got out of bed to run him off of the porch, only to see he wasn't there anymore. Now that I was up again, I wasn't the least bit tired. I figured I'll just get some tea and check Facebook while I'm up, maybe finish the web series I was watching on YouTube. A few minutes into the video, I felt a sudden urge to look up at the kitchen windows. There they were, the tops of two short-statured people, heads cresting the stairs just above my window frame. The people were just short enough to not see in the window, but I could see out. I heard no footsteps on my porch as my stomach turned, but the knock was a steady, hollow thump. The very same thump I had just blamed on my cat. Deciding it was best not to answer, I shut my laptop and crept by the door back to the baby's room. I assumed it was some of the people from the housing across the road. It wasn't until I got to my daughter's room that the creepiness set in. The thump had moved from the kitchen to the bedroom windows. Both windows. A room apart, thumping in perfect time. They were going to wake up my daughter if I didn't run them off. Annoyed, I went to the kitchen, unlocked and opened the door, ready to run around to the side of the house and make them stop. It happened then. Standing there, looking at me, were two 10 or 11-year-old boys. The feeling of dread and the smell of mold almost made me vomit. The smaller of the two then spoke. "May we use your telegraph?" Huh? I just stared blankly at the boys, horrified of what I then realized their eyes were pitch black. He asked again to see my telegraph. There wasn't a sound to be heard. No crickets chirping, no dogs barking, no cars driving by, nothing. I tried to play it cool and ignore the fact that he didn't say telephone or phone or cell, anything that would have made any sense of the situation, and calmly replied, "I don't have service at my house, sorry." The expression on their faces turned to rage as I finished my sentence. Swiftly, I shut the door and locked it as quickly as I could, then stumbled back to protect my daughter. I picked her up from the crib and held her close. The fact that she didn't wake up freaks me out the most but I managed to gather my senses enough to make sure that she was still breathing and warm. Everything seemed okay with her. The thumping on the windows were back. I dropped to the floor as close to the wall as I could and held my little girl in my arms and wept like a child. I felt helpless and afraid. I lied there for what felt like hours and hours, crying and shaking until I heard it, my wife's alarm clock. The thumping stopped the instant the alarm went off, and I crept into the master bedroom with the baby. "What's wrong with you?" my wife asked. "I just had a bad dream," is all I could mutter out. "Okay, well, give me the baby so I can feed her before work." I handed my wife the baby and she fed her like a normal day. I walked her out to the car nervously with the baby in my arms. I asked her not to leave until I walked back in the house. She was put off by the request, but did so to humor me. Once I was safely in the house, I locked the doors again. In the house, I sat horrified until she got home. I insisted we go to the next town over and stay the weekend at my brother's house. And here I sit horrified while she sleeps in the guest room with my daughter, wondering why they stopped when the alarm went off. I think I know the answer. I was aware of black-eyed kids, and she wasn't. Every story I've read about them is from someone who already knew about them. Maybe, just maybe, knowledge of them existing is the only reason they visit. And the last one. No, you won't be calling anybody. This incident took place about 13 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were small town newlyweds from the Midwest. We moved cross country to one of the biggest cities in the Southwest so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to city living, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. Never again after this. The first thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of the situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 a.m. The second thing that should have dawned on me is the kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch and open it. The knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work, a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build, knee-length black leather coat, short black hair, and sunglasses. The sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd. And even more odd, he was eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. I said, no, closed the door, and slid the security chain in place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I replied, and attempted to close the door. Before the door could shut, he put his hand out, stopping the door at its hinges. He looked directly into my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?" "What?" I replied, albeit a little confused. "Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police." He takes a moment to let this information sink in, lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and said, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I forced the door closed, locked it, and called out to my wife. She is scared, hiding in the bedroom. I rip the curtain back to look out the window next to the door. He's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go out to the patio and check the gate. It's still latched from the inside. I was confused, and as I turned to enter the house, I noticed a half-eaten apple lying on the ground. There's something so unnerving about black-eyed kids because they're children. They're disguised as something that you inherently want to help, but something inside of you is telling you that you shouldn't. I personally never experienced one. I personally don't want to experience one, but if you guys have ever had an encounter or know of a creepy encounter with them, then let me know in the comments down below. I also have an email that you can specifically send me your paranormal encounters. So I'll put that up on the screen. In the meantime, make sure you like this video, make sure you're subscribed, and until my next video, love you guys, bye.